It was unbelievable. Suddenly and without warning, red worm.
Look around us. We are stuck in the middle of the ocean.
Urgent reports suggest that in the dark depths of the ocean, a horrifying creature quickly claimed the life of the famous explorer, Mike Degree. Sadly, one grave error led him to a terrifying encounter. Why aren't experts and the media discussing ocean depths after that terrible incident? Let us investigate what really happened to this well-known diver who ventured too deep, exploring the lethal waters. Mike Degree was an American filmmaker who specialized in filming the ocean. He worked on documentaries for big networks like BBC and National Geographic, capturing rare underwater scenes and creatures. He loved the sea and shared his adventures and knowledge through talks, like his famous ones on TED. In the Gulf of Mexico, Mike Degree found something amazing, a very salty underwater lake that looks like a normal lake but isn't. This brine pool is so salty that most creatures can't live there, except for some tough tiny organisms. Around the edges, some shellfish and small sea creatures manage to survive, showing just how different life can be even in nearby spots. When Degree and his team tried to explore this pool with a submarine, they were surprised that it bounced off the surface because the water is so thick with salt. This sparked even more curiosity. Degree even thought there might be a new planet hidden under it, a wild idea that shows just how mysterious this place is. While filming for the Blue Guardian series, Degree saw some of the most beautiful underwater scenes, which he described with great excitement. However, it's important to remember that sometimes these stories might be more about getting people excited than giving just the facts. This strange underwater pool makes scientists and curious explorers ask many questions. What more will they find as they keep studying this unusual spot? Is there really something incredible under there, or is it just a natural curiosity? The ongoing exploration keeps everyone guessing and eager to learn more. From a distance, it looked like steam, but up close, it was water churning around the structure, splashing against the shore. The structure was a strong, circular ring, holding a secret pool inside it, like a treasure hidden by the sea. An exciting effort was made to explore this mysterious feature in the ocean. Using a submarine, the team tried to go inside the circular ring. However, every time they tried, the water's surface acted like a stretchy barrier, bouncing the submarine back. This strange interaction with nature was a unique scene and experience. Mike planned to dive below this lake to see what was hidden. Then, Tom and Eileen Lonergan had just finished volunteering with the Peace Corps in Fiji and decided to have one last adventure before going home. They went to Port Douglas, Australia, and joined a scuba diving trip on January 25, 1998, with the aim of exploring St. Crispin Reef, a well-known diving location in the Great Barrier Reef. They boarded a boat operated by a company called Outer Edge, which was also carrying 26 other tourists eager to dive. The day was set for a normal dive. The group, led by the boat's skipper, Jeffrey Nan, traveled about 25 miles from the Queensland coast to the dive site. There, Tom, Eileen, and the others put on their diving gear and entered the water. Everything seemed typical up to this point, with the divers going underwater in groups to see the coral and sea life. However, this typical dive took a serious turn when Tom and Eileen didn't come back up from the water with the others. Their disappearance during such a closely managed activity like a group dive is hard to understand. It raises big questions about how closely the group was monitored. How is it possible that no one noticed two people were missing? This situation points to a possible lapse in counting the divers, or maybe just poor management of the dive group. Next, a diving trip goes wrong, showing the risks of adventure tourism. The fatal oversight. The fact that Tom and Eileen were left behind in the water points to a severe failure on the part of the diving company. This wasn't just an oversight, it was a significant mistake with dire consequences. It highlights a problem in the adventure tourism industry, where sometimes the rush to accommodate many customers can lead to critical errors in safety measures. When Tom and Eileen didn't resurface, it was clear that something went very wrong. What followed was a mix of confusion and extensive efforts to find them. Despite all efforts, they were never found, and what was meant to be a pleasant diving trip turned into a permanent loss. This event casts a long shadow over the safety standards of commercial adventure tours, underscoring that fun and excitement can sometimes mask serious risks. Imagine looking around and seeing nothing but the endless blue sky and ocean. Not a single boat nearby, just Tom and Eileen, completely forgotten by their boat crew, left alone in the vast sea. It's usually not a fatal mistake to leave divers behind, but in the case of Tom and Eileen, it was a serious error that they weren't on the boat that returned to land. The following day, another group of divers found some diving weights at the bottom of the sea. For them, it was just an extra find, nothing more. Shockingly, it took 2 whole days before anyone noticed Tom and Eileen were missing. The moment of realization came when a bag containing their passports and wallets was found on their original boat. This led to a massive search operation. Alarms went off, and teams from both air and sea were deployed. These teams included civilian boats and the Navy, all joining forces to search for the missing pair. They had been lost for 3 long days. During this extensive search, parts of Tom and Eileen's diving equipment started to appear on a beach, picked up by the rescue teams. Among these items was a dive slate, which is used by divers to write notes underwater. Tom and Eileen Lonergan met their demise either by drowning or a shark attack. They were lost at sea, dehydrated and disoriented. This dire situation came under the scrutiny of coroner Noel Noonan, who swiftly blamed Nan, the person responsible for the excursion, for their deaths. Noonan argued that Nan had failed to follow basic safety rules, a mistake that was too serious to overlook. He believed these errors were severe enough that any jury would see them as criminal. Though Nan was later found not guilty in court, his business suffered greatly. He acknowledged his negligence, was fined, and soon after the government tightened safety regulations for such activities, insisting on more rigorous checks like counting passengers before departure. Meanwhile, the case of Walter Powell, a British lawmaker, who disappeared during a balloon flight in 1881, is equally perplexing. Powell came from a wealthy family and was educated at top institutions. He later became a solicitor before shifting to politics in 1868 as the Conservative MP for Malmesbury. Powell was well regarded for his dedication and his articulate speaking in public. Aside from his political endeavors, he was deeply fascinated by ballooning, a popular pastime among the affluent during that era. His disappearance stirred a lot of confusion and left many unanswered questions about the safety and wisdom of such an unpredictable sport. His choice to pursue ballooning, despite the risks, was indicative of a certain recklessness often seen among the privileged classes during that time. Walter Powell, known for his keen interest in balloon flights, was a prominent member of the Aeronautical Society of Great Britain. His experiences in ballooning were extensive by the time he initiated his last flight on December 10, 1881. He, along with Captain Alfred Templar and Mr. Arthur A.G. Gardner, had planned a routine balloon trip from Bath that was expected to last only a few hours. However, the weather took a turn for the worse, introducing strong winds and heavy fog that complicated their navigation efforts significantly. From the ground, spectators struggled to see the balloon as it battled against the fierce winds, slowly being pushed farther out to sea. In a desperate attempt to overcome the dense fog and regain some control, Powell and his companions threw out weight from the balloon. Unfortunately, this action didn't help much. The balloon kept drifting ominously toward the horizon, eventually disappearing from sight near the coast of Wales. The story of survival for Templar and Gardner is one marked by both fortunate circumstances and quick decision-making. When the balloon got dangerously low over the rough sea waters, they chose to jump out. Miraculously, they landed in the sea and were rescued by a ship that happened to be passing by. Powell, however, decided to stay with the balloon. The last time anyone saw him, he was still in the basket as the balloon rose again and then vanished into the clouds. Now the story moves to the skies, where danger also lurks. Ghost ships and disappearing crews. The disappearance of Powell led to extensive search operations. The Royal Navy, supported by private boats, searched extensively, but found neither Powell nor any part of the balloon, Saladin. This incident prompted a lot of guessing and various ideas about what happened. Some thought the balloon might have been blown off course, dropping Powell into the cold Atlantic Ocean. Others considered different possibilities regarding his fate. Walter Powell, once a respected member of Parliament, met a tragic end after disappearing, only to later be found dead on an uninhabited island. The circumstances of his death remained unclear due to the absence of solid evidence, leading to numerous unverified theories about his fate. This unresolved situation left many questions unanswered and sparked considerable interest in what might have really happened to him. His disappearance had a significant impact, causing deep grief among his family, colleagues, and the public. In Parliament, his fellow MPs spoke highly of his dedication to his role and expressed their sorrow over his untimely death. The event also highlighted the inherent risks associated with ballooning, leading to a stronger push for stricter safety measures and better protocols for those navigating the skies. Over time, Powell's story became a popular subject of local stories, with occasional claims of sightings and items supposedly connected to his last path. While these claims were often exaggerated, they reflected a continuous fascination with his life and the final fatal trip he undertook. Despite the dramatic embellishments often associated with these tales, they helped preserve Powell's legacy as an early aviation enthusiast and a committed public servant. His story vividly reminds us of the dangers faced by early balloonists and illustrates the unpredictable nature of such early flights. This narrative not only highlights human curiosity, but also the harsh realities of venturing into the unknown, which for Powell had deadly consequences. Meanwhile, a similar incident occurred when the merchant ship SV Resolven was discovered abandoned on August 29, 1884, adrift between Ballou Island and Catalina, Newfoundland, and Labrador. The ship was found with its lifeboat missing, and the last ship log entry provided no hints as to why the crew had left. Found by HMS Mallard, the disappearance of Resolven's crew added another layer to the dangers of sea travel during that time, showing that the ocean, much like the sky, was filled with its own dangers and uncertainties. For reasons unknown, no one ever saw or heard from them again. The strange events that occurred when Resolven was found drifting at sea have led some to compare it to the famous ship Mary Celeste. On August 29, 1884, Lieutenant William L.H. Brown, commanding the HMS Mallard of the Royal Navy, noticed Resolven's erratic behavior on the sea. Approaching closer, despite several attempts to communicate with the vessel, there was no response. Upon boarding, the crew of HMS Mallard found a ship that was in good working order and showed no signs of why it should have been abandoned. The most recent log entry had been made just 6 hours earlier, and the ship had only minor damage to its yardarm. Intriguingly, the lifeboat was missing, and the kitchen fire was still burning, suggesting that whoever had been on board left in a rush. The ship carried 4 passengers and 7 crew members, none of whom were familiar with navigating in icy northern waters. Some believe they might have left the ship in fear after sustaining minor damage from ice, possibly causing their lifeboat to overturn, although no one was found. The ship was eventually towed to a nearby port, repaired and relaunched with a new crew and owner. However, it disappeared once more in 1887 while transporting timber from Nova Scotia to Newfoundland, which led to it being called the Welsh Mary Celeste. Turning to a more recent event in the 21st century, the disappearance of the yacht C2, often called the Ghost Yacht, continues to be an unresolved issue. In April 2007, the C2 was found floating without direction off the northeastern coast of Australia near the Great Barrier Reef, without its 3-man crew. The disappearance has sparked a wide range of explanations and discussions, securing its place as a notable modern-day maritime issue. It was crewed by 3 experienced sailors: 56-year-old Derek Batten, and brothers Peter and James Tunstead, age 69 and 63. They intended to sail to Perth in Western Australia, a trip that was expected to take several weeks. When examining the yacht C2, it first appears to be just fine. The engine was running, a laptop was open, and there was a meal laid out as though the crew had only left for a moment. Their wallets and mobile phones were also found undisturbed. All the emergency equipment, including life rafts and beacons, seemed untouched and ready for use. However, a closer look revealed some troubling inconsistencies. The sail was badly torn, a boat fender was missing, and a fishing line was oddly trailing in the water. These details didn't fit with the otherwise untouched appearance of the yacht. It was as if a sudden event had disrupted a normal day on the sea, back to the sea where modern riddles echo old ones. When the sea swallowed sailors. An extensive search was launched for Derek Batten and the Tooned brothers, who were nowhere to be found. The area was thoroughly scanned by air and sea, but no sign of them was ever discovered. No signals for help had been sent out, and there were no indicators of any violent encounters aboard. This absence of clues led to widespread speculation. A widely discussed possibility was that an accident had occurred on board. Perhaps one of the men had accidentally fallen into the sea while trying to untangle the fishing line, and in a panic, the others might have fallen in as well while trying to help. The fact that the small dinghy on the yacht was still securely in place suggests that there wasn't a planned evacuation. It implies a sudden, unexpected event occurred. Another theory proposed that unexpected rough weather or a rogue wave might have swept the crew overboard. The condition of the torn sail and the missing fender could suggest a struggle with the elements. However, the weather records from that period reported calm conditions, making this theory less likely. The possibility of foul play, such as piracy, was also considered. However, the untouched state of the crew's belongings, along with the absence of any signs of struggle or theft, and the location not being known for piracy, made this scenario unlikely. The official investigation led by the Queensland coroner concluded that the most likely explanation was the accident involving the fishing line. They proposed that a series of unfortunate events triggered by one man falling overboard led to the others also ending up in the water. Joshua Slocum, an American sailor known for sailing around the world by himself, disappeared while on a trip from Vineyard Haven, Massachusetts, to the West Indies in his boat, the Spray. Slocum was originally from Nova Scotia and had become famous not only as a sailor but also as a writer. His book, Sailing Alone Around the World, became very popular after its release in 1900. His disappearance is unsettling, but not unique in the history of sea travel. Slocum, a seasoned sailor, aimed to explore 3 big rivers, the Amazon, Rio Negro, and Orinoco. After he embarked on his journey, he vanished without a trace. His disappearance became a matter of concern when his wife alerted the newspapers in July 1910, suggesting he might have been lost at sea. Oddly, Slocum had never learned to swim, thinking it unnecessary unless close to land. Then, on October 27, 1919, a ship named Orduna ran aground at a dock in New York City. This incident happened right after the ship had completed its ocean crossing from Liverpool, England, with a brief stop in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The Ordunas was meant to be a standard crossing of the Atlantic, but it ended unexpectedly when the ship collided with the wharf. This event added an unexpected chapter to what should have been a typical sea voyage, highlighting how even routine trips can end in unforeseen complications. On her final evening at sea, the small gray-haired stewardess brought a concerning report that quickly made its way into numerous newspapers. She recounted that on that particular night, she had delivered dinner to the Empress's private room. Later, at 6:30 p.m., she returned to clean up, and everything appeared normal. However, the Empress asked her to come back with sandwiches at 9:30 p.m. When she did, she found the room empty and the sandwiches untouched. This situation struck the stewardess as unusual. Throughout her long career on the ship, she had come to know the habits and preferences of the passengers, especially those as prominent as the Empress. It was out of character for the Empress to request a meal and then not be there to eat it without informing someone. Questions began to swirl in the stewardess's mind. Was the Empress suddenly called away for an important matter, or was there a more troubling reason for her absence? On a busy ocean liner, even a small oddity draws attention. The numerous disappearance on the high seas. As the stewardess stood in the grand hallway of the ship, a sense of unease took hold of her. The normally bustling space was unusually silent, making the untouched plate of sandwiches outside the Empress's quarters seem even more out of place. These perfectly arranged snacks, now ignored, hinted at something wrong. With no clear clues, the stewardess's imagination took over, pondering many possibilities. Maybe the Empress had simply decided not to eat, or perhaps something more serious had happened, like she was in some kind of danger. The tension on the ship grew thicker as whispers and rumors started to spread among the passengers. Everyone seemed to have their own idea of what might have happened. Some theories were sensible, while others were wild and filled with drama. In hidden spots and around the fancy dining tables, people talked in hushed voices, trying to guess the reasons behind the Empress's unusual absence. Throughout all this, the stewardess kept her face calm, showing none of the worry and curiosity that were swirling inside her. As the large ship continued its path across the sea, the story of the Empress's mysterious no-show became a hot topic not just among those on board, but also far beyond. News about the incident spread fast and reached newspapers, which covered the story with great interest. The simple fact that a meal was left untouched had sparked a lot of attention and concern, showing how even a small change in someone's usual behavior could capture the imagination of many people. This situation made the passengers even more curious and concerned. They kept talking about it, trying to fill in the gaps with their own speculations. Every new bit of gossip added more layers to the story, making it richer and more complex. The stewardess, meanwhile, continued to perform her tasks with professionalism, but inside she was piecing together her own theories, trying to make sense of the clues before her. A reporter from William Randolph Hearst's International Feature Service was allowed into the first-class cabin on the ship named Empress. The waitress let him in, perhaps too easily. He noticed immediately that the bed looked as if no one had slept in it the night before. He turned his attention to stateroom 480, which had some odd features. The door opened into a narrow hallway, too small for a woman of Marie Empress's size. The end of this passageway had a tiny porthole, just 13 inches across, and it was locked from the inside. This setup made it highly unlikely that she could have left through there unnoticed. The ship's design meant that Marie had to pass through several busy corridors to get to her cabin. Marie Empress was well known for her striking personality and distinct appearance, making it impossible for her not to be seen. She couldn't have walked through these areas without attracting attention, as if she were highlighted under a spotlight. The idea that she could have discreetly gone through the crowd was far-fetched. Moving through the busy areas of the ship, it seems almost laughable to think that the Empress wasn't seen by anyone. Every salon she had to pass was at least somewhat filled with people. It's hard to believe she wasn't noticed by any stewards or officers along her path. The notion that she could navigate through these crowds unnoticed is hard to accept as true. Once she reached the deck, the possibility that she could get to the rail and jump off without attracting attention is even more unlikely. The ship was well lit, with lights shining brightly on all decks and walking areas, until well after the time she supposedly disappeared. In such a brightly lit environment, how could she possibly vanish without a trace? The writer's suggestion that she could leap off the ship unnoticed seems even more unlikely when considering the lighting and number of people around. The account from a chatty hostess adds more details, noting that the Empress always wore black clothes, including a small hat covered by a large veil, as if she were dressing for a funeral every day. Other passengers noted that despite her dark clothes, she seemed happy. This odd contrast between her gloomy attire and her cheerful demeanor raises even more questions. How could someone dress so solemnly, yet behave in such a happy manner? Full of excitement, she was eagerly looking forward to spending time with her American friends. However, the news coverage soon shifted dramatically. A newspaper claimed she would soon be seen on a New York stage, wearing a halo made of seaweed, performing for an audience that was always ready for new entertainment. This wasn't surprising, considering her involvement in previous promotional stunts. Some sailors from her ship reported seeing Miss Empress wearing a sailor's uniform and mixing with the crew the night before they arrived in New York. This detail added more intrigue to the stories circulating about her. An unnamed petty officer from the Orduna suggested to a reporter that she might be up to something unusual once again. Hidden in the cargo area by wearing men's clothes, her items included attire typically worn by men. It's possible she grew tired of the typical roles expected of women and chose to explore life as a man for a while. Broadway's clever press agents, who are experienced in identifying tricks, quickly supported the idea that the whole situation was just a stunt. The New York Tribune confidently reported that the disappearance of Marie Empress was nothing more than a clever trick, proclaiming that Marie was indeed alive but hidden from public view for now. The press was still not ready to reveal this potentially profitable trick. Known as a master of Broadway hoaxes and a former promoter for the famous escape artist Houdini, Walter J. Kingsley was identified by the Tribune as the brains behind this scheme. On the other hand, the New York Daily Mirror immediately started treating the situation as a joke, promoting the idea of a PR stunt so effectively that it soon became the accepted explanation among the public. However, not everyone was persuaded by this explanation, showing a clear split between those skeptical of the claim and those who accepted it as the truth, pointing to a manipulated effort to grab public attention. These stories were always a passion for filmmaker Mike Degree, who sadly died in a helicopter crash in Australia in 2012 while filming a documentary. Even though he is gone, his extensive body of work lives on, helping educate and motivate new groups of scientists, filmmakers, and environmental activists. His enthusiasm for the ocean brought new insights to marine science and nature documentaries, expanding our understanding and connection with the sea horror stories. Was Marie Empress's disappearance truly a hoax masterminded by Broadway? Or could there be more to her story? Like, comment, and subscribe to explore more unsolved riddles.